Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Appreciate you all for tuning in today. Let's get started. We got another 2-hour show. Really excited to bring this to you. So, Cowboys-Packers last night. We got a 40-point tie. It's the most points ever for both teams that ended in a tie in NFL history. There's never been a better time to come and give the bland opinion. This is how close NFL teams are. This is just the honest truth. When we think of NFL teams, it's very easy if you want to do the very best team in the league and the very worst team in the league and say, okay, we can clearly see the gap. Like if you took the Buffalo Bills, who most people probably would say like they're going to be atop a lot of people's power rankings this week, if they're the best team, or the Philadelphia Eagles, and you took the New Orleans Saints, who are probably going to be at the bottom of most people's power rankings, and say, okay, there's a big gap there in rosters. That's true. After about team 2 or 3, like once you remove the Bills and the Eagles, and then you remove the Saints, and maybe a lot of people will probably tell you the Panthers, the gap is not big in the NFL. This is why, again, when you get to college sports, and we're going to talk about that today, is college sports, one team, a Michigan, an Alabama, a Georgia, they could just have a whole bunch of 5 stars and crush another team and be so demonstratively more talented. This is why the expectation of winning every game is so drastically different. But in the NFL, and we all know this, these are all 5-star plus guys. These are all the best players on their individual college team. And so the gap is not big when it comes to overall talent. The biggest gap comes from coaching. When you get blowouts in the NFL, they're not just because, oh, you're just walking all over somebody because you're just so much more talented. The majority of blowouts in the NFL come from that week's game plan was demonstratively better than the other team's game plan, and you caught them off guard. Maybe you were pressuring and they weren't ready for it. You had blitz beaters versus they were throwing pressure all the time. Like, coaching is generally what's going to lead to more blowouts. Again, the talent in the NFL, everybody's looking at that game last night, and the entire week leading into it was, man, the Packers just going to boat race the Dallas Cowboys. They're just so much better. They got Micah Parsons and Gary, and look at their defense, how dominant it's been. Well, that dominant defense gave up 40 points to an offense that most of us don't think it's really good at best with CeeDee Lamb and everybody healthy, and they're missing an offensive lineman and have no CeeDee Lamb, and Dak's still out there treating them like they're Division II defense. That Dallas Cowboys offense, if you were to say, hey, take out CeeDee Lamb, how many points are you scoring? No one's going to say 40 on the Green Bay Packers defense with Micah Parsons and those guys. Like, do you see how dominant they've been the first 2-3 weeks of the season? Like, yes, they lost to Cleveland last week, but that wasn't the defense's fault. That was a bad pick by Jordan Love. This is how close the margins really are, and I really like Matt LaFleur. But if you walk away from that game with anything other than, again, this is how close, really good, like this is how close NFL teams are. Like, they're all super talented. They all have great players. And if you walked away from that game, the guy who we should be impressed with, and the record's not going to say it because they're going to be they're 1-2-1 now. I have Kyle Shanahan as my early coach of the year because he was doing this with Mac Jones. Probably the second most impressive coaching job, if we're basing it off our expectations, it's got to be Brian Schottenheimer. Again, nobody came into this league. Nobody came into this year thinking, oh, that was a great hire. Nobody. I watch sports media. I watch news radio. I was listen to news radio, all this stuff. Everybody was down on Brian Schottenheimer. He was getting, if you were doing cowboy reports for the offseason, it was F's across the board because they didn't believe in him as a hire. Obviously, then the Micah trade really just, kicked it into overdrive right before the season started. But Brian Schottenheimer against a coach that we all, for the most part, unanimously love in Matt LaFleur. He got his offense to 40 points against a much better defense in terms of personnel. Like, how are we not saying he's been one of the most impressive coaches through 4 weeks in the NFL? We don't think we consistently don't think he has the talent. We especially after losing his best player on defense, he doesn't have his best player on offense in CeeDee Lamb. Like, I walked away from that game last night going, and I texted Tony and Will. I said, "Hey, are the Packers not as good as we thought, or are the Cowboys just better than we think?" And Tony gave the only answer you can give, which is yes. This is how close it is in the NFL. Talent is not college football where you can just be demonstratively more talented than the other team. This is professional football. These guys are all 5-star recruits. These guys are all the best player on their college team. And it's so evident when you see games like last night. Like that game, 40-point tie, man. Like, what else do you need to say? What else do you need to see to know just how close it is week in, week out? And that's why coaching matters so much. I've been on this for the last couple weeks. Like, your owner, your GM, your head coach. If you can't nail those three, and four, I apologize. Owner, GM, head coach, and then your quarterback. I apologize. 4. Like, Dak is just better than we think. We think if Dak is like fringe top 10, Dak should be in your solidified top 10 list. Whoever's in your top 10 quarterbacks, Dak needs to make it. Head coach, Brian Schottenheimer, none of us felt that way heading into the season, but he's had a great first month of the season. GM and owner for the Cowboys, none of us we all think he's crazy. So for Dak and Schottenheimer to pull off that performance, I walked away incredibly impressed. Incredibly impressed. Again, 40-point tie. How close NFL teams are with talent. Let's move to the earlier game of the day. That was the game of the day as far as the headline, Micah returning, coming back to Dallas for the first time. But what was supposed to be the game of the day were the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. And the Chiefs were finally explosive again, I think. Look, the reality is setting in for a lot of these NFL teams. We're a quarter of the way through the season. To quote Cam Ward, you know if you're ass or not. Like, this is the reality. But week 1, you can kind of tell yourself, okay, it's just week 1. Week 2, okay, it's still early. Week 3, man, we could still pull this around. By the time you're week 4, you're not statistically eliminated, but most teams know who they are now. If you're 0-4 after 4 weeks, the chances are you're not that good. If you're 1-3 after 4 weeks, the chances are you're probably not that good. And if you're 3-1 and 4-0, vice versa, you feel really good about yourselves, you probably are that good. You've gotten to see multiple different teams. You've gotten to see multiple different looks, multiple different game plans. And we pretty much know we are starting to see where everybody is going to fall in the hierarchy. Some teams still not quite as confident. There are some 3-1 teams, who maybe wear black and yellow that I'm not ready to say are that great. But the Kansas City Chiefs through 4 weeks, I think, still are who we thought they were. And despite the offensive output yesterday, I'm not willing to change my opinion on them. And that is, the Chiefs, it still looks hard on offense. Now, yesterday, they're scoring all these points. It looks great. They're going to celebrate. But that was against the Ravens defense, who, by the second quarter, was missing half of their defense. I'm sorry. That's the game you're supposed to look good. I just can't give you that much credit for looking great on offense in that game. Now, to their credit, the Ravens entered the game injured. They get the Ravens start that first drive. Derrick Henry has the good run, which is great to see coming off the fumbling issues. They go right down the field. They score a touchdown. Lamar looks great on that first drive. And as the Chiefs have done, to their credit over these last couple of years, is their defense always rebounds. Like, your opening play drive almost doesn't matter. Everybody looks against the Chiefs on their opening drive, and then it's what you do going forward, which you saw them containing Baltimore and Lamar and this offense. So give their defense credit. But by the time you saw more and more guys, obviously Matabuke didn't start the game. Marlon Humphrey ends up leaving the game. Roquan Smith ends up leaving the games. Nate Wiggins ended up leaving the game. And I'm like, Andy Reid, I believe, made the right decision, which is, hey, let's add on. Let's try to get these guys their confidence back because we know we're just playing against backups right now. Like, they're playing against a defense that is half backups. These guys would not be in this game if not for all of these injuries. And then Lamar goes out, and it's like, all right, now this game is totally out of hand. No Lamar, you're missing half your defense. I'm not going to take too much of that game from what Kansas City did. Now, Baltimore, I think, has real issues. Because if Baltimore, it might just be, I viewed it in the moment as like, all right, there's just a bunch of injuries happening. I'm not going to overreact the same way I'm not going to overreact about the Chiefs offense. But Tony did say something that made it interesting. And I always give credit to this for people that are hardcore fans watching every single game. You just have a different perspective, which is, he said that game didn't feel just like a loss and get over it. He said that game felt like the end of something. And that could be true. Because as great as we know Lamar is, and he is, Lamar Jackson's one of the best players we've ever seen in the history of the NFL, the all-time leading rusher for a quarterback, the all-time leader in passer rating. Like, we all know who Lamar Jackson is. But this defense, and specifically, and we're going to talk to Tony later this week, this coaching staff, it's going to be really hard to continue to listen to John Harbaugh. I've defended John Harbaugh. I think he is one of the best coaches in the league, but he could just be running his course. It's going to be really hard to continue to listen to Zach Orr, who now just definitively his resume is 70% bad, 30% great. Right? Like, they had that great defense the last third of last season, but they started off last season on defense horrible. They've started this season on defense horrible, even before the injuries. So if it's time for a change in Baltimore, I am finally willing to open up that conversation. Like, this just is who this Ravens team is. An explosive and dynamic offense who, if Lamar, there's the hamstring injury, if he does play next week and he gets back on track, I still believe absolutely can win this division because I have no faith in Pittsburgh. The Bengals, obviously, Joe Burrow's out for pretty much the year, and Cleveland is Cleveland. But this just might be who Baltimore is. And I believe, again, even that game with injuries and them scoring 30 points, this is just who Kansas City is, which is, I just don't believe they're going to be a great offensive team or even a really good offensive team the entirety of the season. So, yeah, man, it's the NFL. I mean, if you want to be a part of one of the coolest and most unique communities, don't forget to like and subscribe.